The holographic image flickered across every screen on every human colony, station, and settlement from Earth to the Outer Rim territories. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the UES Sentinel, humanity's flagship and pride of the United Earth Space Command, watching the broadcast with a jaw clenched so tight her teeth ached. The alien before them was massive even in projection, easily 3 meters tall, with 4 arms crossed over a barrel chest covered in what looked like living obsidian armor. The creature's eyes glowed amber, and when it spoke, the translation matrix rendered its words in cold, clinical precision. "Humans of the Terran Coalition," the alien began, its voice resonating with harmonics that suggested multiple vocal cords. "I am Supreme Commander Carthex of the Vrelner Dominion. Your expansion into the galactic community has been observed, measured, and found to be in violation of Dominion space. You have encroached upon territories that have belonged to the Dominion for 17,000 of your years. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. You have 48 standard hours to begin immediate withdrawal from all contested systems, transfer all colonial holdings to Dominion authority, and submit your military forces for decommissioning. Failure to comply will result in the systematic elimination of every human presence beyond your home system. We have pacified 237 species. You will be no different." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving behind a stunned silence that stretched across human space like a physical thing. Chen Wei took a slow breath, her dark eyes scanning the faces of her bridge crew. Fear mixed with defiance in their expressions, a combination she knew well from her 30 years of service. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belts of Kepler 442, negotiated first contact with the Peaceful Thetan Collective, and commanded peacekeeping operations during the Mars Independence Crisis. Never had she seen humanity face a threat of this magnitude. "Status report," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. Commander James Rivera, her executive officer and the closest thing she had to a friend in the service, pulled up tactical displays with practiced efficiency. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, earned from 20 years of watching humanity's back. Long-range sensors detected the Dominion fleet 2 hours before the transmission. Their holding position at the edge of the Arcturus system, approximately 200 vessels by our count. Energy signatures are. "Admiral, some of those ships are reading power outputs higher than our entire battle group combined." Composition? Chen Wei moved to stand beside the holographic display, her uniform crisp despite the 16-hour shift she'd already worked. "Mix of what we assume are cruisers, destroyers, and at least 12 dreadnought-class vessels. The formation is standard encirclement doctrine, designed to cut off retreat and reinforcement. They're not trying to hide their intentions." Rivera manipulated the display, zooming in on the alien vessels. They were brutalist in design, all sharp angles and dark metal that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Communications has intercepted scattered transmissions. The Dominion has issued similar ultimatums to 3 other species in neighboring sectors. All of them surrendered within 12 hours. Chen Wei felt her stomach tighten. The Vrelner Dominion was unknown to human intelligence until 3 months ago when a deep space probe captured fragmentary evidence of their existence. The galactic community, it seemed, was far larger and far more dangerous than humanity had imagined during their first enthusiastic steps into the stars. Humans had spread across 53 systems in the centuries since the invention of faster-than-light travel, establishing colonies, research stations, and trading posts with the handful of species they'd encountered. Most of those species had been peaceful, curious about the energetic newcomers who approached the universe with equal parts wonder and reckless ambition. The Dominion, apparently, did not share that curiosity. "Recall all fleet elements to rally points Delta through Sigma," Chen Wei ordered. "Get me a live channel to Earth Command and the Colonial Council. And someone find out what diplomatic channels we have, if any." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as her crew executed orders with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Wei turned back to the viewport, staring out at the stars that suddenly seemed less welcoming than they had that morning. Somewhere out there, 200 warships waited for humanity's answer. Surrender meant abandoning millions of colonists, decades of exploration, and the dream of humanity taking its place among the stars. Resistance meant war against an enemy that had conquered hundreds of species over millennia. Neither option was acceptable. Admiral, Lieutenant Sarah Kozlov called from the communications station. Her accent still carried hints of her Moscow upbringing. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. It's Director General Okonkwo herself." The main display shifted to show a woman in her 60s, her face bearing the weathered dignity of someone who had guided humanity through crises both terrestrial and cosmic. Director General Amara Okonkwo had been a senator during First Contact, a general during the Mars Crisis, and now served as the highest civilian authority in the Terran Coalition. Her eyes carried the weight of 8 billion people on Earth and another 2 billion scattered across the colonies. "Admiral Wei," Okonkwo's voice was steady, but Wei could hear the undercurrent of steel beneath. "I trust you've seen the Dominion's generous offer." "Yes, ma'am. My tactical team is analyzing their fleet strength now. It's not favorable." "Nothing about this situation is favorable, Admiral." Okonkwo leaned forward, and Wei could see the exhaustion in the older woman's face. "The Colonial Council is in emergency session. Half of them want to negotiate, the other half want to fight, and all of them are terrified. I have reports of panic buying on Earth, colony evacuation requests flooding every government office, and 3 separate colony governors asking for permission to surrender independently." Wei felt her jaw tighten again. Fragmentation would be the worst possible response. "Agreed. Which is why I'm issuing the following directive, and it goes for every ship in the fleet." Okonkwo's eyes hardened. "No surrender. Not one colony, not one station, not one ship. We've spent 100 years building a home among the stars, and I'll be damned if we hand it over to the first bully that shows up with a big enough stick. That's a declaration of war, Director General. That's a declaration of defiance, Admiral. War is what the Dominion will bring to our doorstep whether we surrender or not. History taught us that appeasement feeds tyranny. We made that mistake too many times on Earth. We won't make it again out here." Okonkwo paused, and something flickered across her face. Hope, maybe, or perhaps just desperation wearing a convincing mask. "Besides, we may have an ace that the Dominion doesn't know about." Wei's eyebrows rose. "Ma'am? 18 months ago, we lost contact with the UESV Retribution, the experimental cruiser that departed on a deep space reconnaissance mission beyond the frontier. Official record listed the ship as lost with all hands. That was a necessary fiction." Okonkwo's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "The Retribution wasn't destroyed, Admiral. It was tasked with a black-level research mission, something we kept off the books in case it violated any first contact protocols we weren't aware of yet." "What kind of research?" Wei felt her pulse quicken. Black-level meant beyond top secret, the kind of projects that didn't exist in any official capacity. The kind that makes 200 warships less intimidating. The Retribution was testing a new weapons system, new propulsion technology, and new defensive capabilities based on theoretical physics that our best minds swore was impossible. The lead scientist was Dr. Alara Ven. You might remember her. Wei did remember. Dr. Alara Ven had been a rising star in the Advanced Weapons Research Division, a physicist who thought in dimensions that made other scientists' heads hurt. She was also stubborn, brilliant, and absolutely certain that humanity's current technology was primitive compared to what they could achieve. Wei had met her once at a military gala, a brief conversation that mostly consisted of Ven explaining why conventional warfare was obsolete in terms that went over Wei's head. The woman had been magnetic in that way that truly brilliant people often were, completely absorbed in her vision of the future. The retribution is operational? Chinwei asked. More than operational. We received a coded transmission 6 hours ago, responding to our emergency recall beacon. The retribution detected the Dominion fleet and is en route to Arcturus. ETA is 36 hours. Okonkwo leaned back, and now that expression was definitely hope. Captain Andrei Volkov reports that field tests have exceeded all expectations. If he's right, if Dr. Ven's theories have been proven, then we have a chance, Admiral. 1 ship against 200. Chinwei shook her head. Even with advanced technology, those are impossible odds. Humanity has made a habit of beating impossible odds, Admiral. It's what we do. Okonkwo's gaze intensified. I need you to buy the retribution time. Maneuver the fleet, show the Dominion that we're not going to roll over, but do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Keep them focused on conventional threats. The longer they remain ignorant of what's coming, the better our chances. And if the retribution fails? Then we go down fighting and make them remember that humanity doesn't surrender. Ever. Okonkwo's image flickered. The Colonial Council will issue a formal response to the Dominion in 12 hours, rejecting their ultimatum. Until then, the fleet is yours, Admiral. Make us proud. The transmission ended, leaving Chinwei staring at the empty space where Okonkwo's face had been. Around her, the bridge crew worked with renewed purpose, energized by the knowledge that surrender was off the table. She understood their reaction. Humans were at their best when their backs were against the wall, when the only options were victory or defiance. It was a trait that had carried the species from cave dwellers to star sailors, and it would either save them or doom them in the next 2 days. Commander Rivera, Chinwei turned to her XO. Assemble the fleet in defensive formation around the Arcturus colonies. I want layered sensor networks, patrol routes covering every approach vector, and civilian evacuation plans ready to execute on my command. If the Dominion moves early, I want us ready. Aye, Admiral. Should I inform the other captains about the retribution? Chinwei considered. Operational security suggested keeping it quiet, but her captains deserved to know what they were buying time for. Flag officers only, encrypted channels. Everyone else gets told we're expecting reinforcements. That should keep morale up. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity that Chinwei knew by heart. Fleets didn't assemble themselves, and coordinating 63 vessels into a coherent defensive posture required constant attention to detail. The Terran Coalition Navy had been built for exploration and peacekeeping, not fleet-scale warfare against a technologically superior opponent. Their ships were solid, reliable, and completely outmatched by everything they were seeing from the Dominion fleet. Chinwei found herself catching a few hours of sleep in her ready room, her dreams filled with burning ships and the screams of colonists she couldn't save. She woke to the gentle chime of her personal terminal and the face of Commander Rivera on the screen. Admiral, the Colonial Council's response is about to broadcast. I thought you'd want to watch. She splashed water on her face, straightened her uniform, and returned to the bridge in time to see the transmission begin. The council had chosen Ambassador Marcus Stone to deliver their message, a former military officer turned diplomat who had the presence to stare down an alien empire without flinching. He appeared on every screen in human space, standing before the flags of Earth and the colonies. Supreme Commander Carthax of the Vrelmer Dominion, Stone began, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's collective will. We have received your ultimatum and given it the consideration it deserves. Our answer is simple, no. Humanity did not crawl out of caves, survive ice ages, and reach the stars only to surrender at the first sign of adversity. The systems you claim as Dominion territory were uninhabited when our colonies arrived. We have built homes, raised families, and established communities that we will not abandon. If you choose to make war upon us, then you will learn what every tyrant in human history has eventually learned. We do not break easily, we do not surrender willingly, and we will make you pay for every meter of ground you take. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. Humanity stands. The transmission ended. Chen Wei felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. They had just declared war on an empire that had conquered hundreds of species. Every human in the fleet knew what came next. "Tactical, what's the Dominion fleet doing?" she asked. Lieutenant Commander Park checked his displays, his expression grim. "No change in formation, but we're detecting increased energy signatures across their fleet. They're powering weapons systems. Time until they reach effective weapons range? At their current speed, 6 hours. They're not rushing, Admiral. They're taking their time, probably expecting us to reconsider." Chen Wei allowed herself a cold smile. "Then let's show them we meant what we said. All ships, execute formation pattern Sierra 7. I want to spread across the Arcturus colonies like a shield. Launch all reconnaissance drones and establish a sensor perimeter. If they're going to attack, we'll see them coming." The fleet moved into position, 63 ships against 200. Chen Wei watched the tactical display and did the math that every officer in the fleet was doing. Even if every human ship took out 3 enemies before being destroyed, they would still lose. The only question was how much damage they could inflict before the inevitable conclusion. 30 hours until the retribution arrived. 30 hours to hold against impossible odds. The Dominion fleet began to advance. Chen Wei stood at the center of her bridge, surrounded by her crew, and felt the strange calm that came with absolute certainty. They were going to fight. They were probably going to die. But humanity would not go quietly into extinction. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Chen Wei. In a few hours, we're going to face an enemy that thinks we're just another primitive species to be conquered and forgotten. They've done this hundreds of times before, and they expect us to follow the same pattern as everyone else. Fear, surrender, subjugation. But they've made a critical error in judgment. They don't know humanity. They don't know that we've spent our entire history as a species fighting against impossible odds. They don't know that surrender isn't in our nature, that defiance is our default setting, that we would rather burn among the stars than bow to tyranny. Today, we're going to teach the Dominion a lesson that will echo across the galaxy. Today, they learn that humanity doesn't surrender. Not now. Not ever. All ships, stand by for combat operations. It's time to show them what humanity, fuck yeah, really means." The bridge erupted in cheers, and across the fleet, Chen Wei knew her words were being repeated, shared, and embraced. She had given them permission to be what humanity did best, defiant, stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to back down. The Dominion fleet continued its advance, a wall of dark metal and hostile intent. Chen Wei watched them come and thought of the retribution, somewhere in the darkness between stars, racing to join the battle. One experimental warship against an empire. It should have been ridiculous. Instead, she found herself believing. Because if there was one thing humanity had proven time and time again, it was that the impossible just took a little longer to achieve. "Admiral," Rivera said quietly, standing beside her command chair. "Whatever happens in the next 30 hours, it's been an honor serving with you." "The honor has been mine, James. But let's save the eulogies for after we've survived the impossible." Again. He smiled at that, a flash of the young officer she'd met 20 years ago, and returned to his station. The Dominion fleet drew closer, weapons hot, confident in their inevitable victory. Chen Wei watched them come and whispered a prayer to whatever forces govern the universe. Let the retribution be everything they needed it to be. Let humanity's defiance count for something. Let them survive long enough to show the galaxy that humans were not just another species to be conquered. Let them prove that humanity, indeed, had earned its place among the stars. The countdown to conflict ticked away, and Admiral Chen Wei prepared to give the order that would change everything. The first shots fired by the Vrumler Dominion were meant to be a demonstration, a show of overwhelming force designed to break human morale before the real battle began. 3 massive plasma lances erupted from the lead dreadnought, crossing the distance between fleets in seconds and striking the UES Valiant, a destroyer positioned at the forward edge of humanity's defensive formation. The shields held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing like wet paper, and the hull beneath vaporized in a cascade of fire that consumed the ship from bow to stern. 473 souls vanished in an instant, their sacrifice marked only by an expanding debris field and the horrified silence that gripped every human vessel. Admiral Chen Wei felt the death of the Valiant like a physical blow, but she kept her voice steady as she gave the order every captain in the fleet was waiting for. All ships, return fire. Weapons free. Show them what humanity can do. The response was immediate and defiant. 62 remaining ships unleashed everything they had: kinetic railgun rounds that could punch through asteroids, missile salvos with warheads that burned hotter than stars, and directed energy weapons that carved lines of brilliant light across the darkness. The human barrage slammed into the Dominion fleet with the fury of a species that had nothing left to lose, and for a glorious moment, Chen Wei saw shields flicker and hull plating buckle on several enemy vessels. Then the Dominion returned fire in earnest, and the battle became a desperate struggle for survival. The tactical display on the Sentinel's bridge transformed into a nightmare of red hostile markers and disappearing friendly signatures. The UES Defiance took a direct hit to its reactor section and split in half, its crew compartments exposed to vacuum. The UES Thunder managed to destroy a Dominion cruiser with a concentrated missile barrage before being obliterated by return fire from 3 different vessels. Humanity fought with everything they had, captains making sacrifices that would have earned them medals in any other battle, but the mathematics of the engagement were brutally simple. The Dominion had more ships, better weapons, and shields that regenerated faster than human weapons could deplete them. "Admiral, we've lost 17 ships in the first engagement," Commander Rivera reported, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "The Dominion fleet has lost 3 vessels with moderate damage to 8 others. They're advancing on the colonies. We can't hold this line." Chen Wei knew he was right, knew that every tactical simulation she could run ended the same way, but surrender still wasn't an option. She was about to order the fleet to fall back to secondary defensive positions when Lieutenant Kozlov suddenly gasped at her communications station. "Admiral, I'm picking up a new contact on long-range sensors. Single vessel, approaching at speeds that shouldn't be possible. It's broadcasting Terran Coalition identification codes." Kozlov's fingers flew across her console, her eyes widening as data streamed across her screens. "Mother of God, it's traveling at 0.97 light speed and still accelerating. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. Admiral, I think it's the Retribution." The bridge fell silent except for the sounds of ongoing combat coordination. Chen Wei felt her heart rate spike as she pulled up the sensor data on her command display. The contact was indeed moving at speeds that violated every principle of conventional faster-than-light travel. Standard FTL drives worked by creating a bubble of compressed spacetime, allowing ships to effectively travel faster than light without actually moving faster than light within the bubble. This vessel was doing something entirely different, something that looked like it was partially phasing out of normal spacetime while maintaining real space velocity. The energy readings were astronomical, far beyond anything humanity had produced before. "Time to intercept?" Chen Wei asked, barely daring to hope. "At current velocity, for minutes," Kozlov replied. "Admiral, they're hailing us on encrypted channels. It's Captain Volkov." The main display shifted to show a man in his early 50s, his square jaw covered in gray stubble that suggested he hadn't slept in days. Captain Andrei Volkov had been a legend in the fleet before his disappearance with the Retribution, a tactical genius who approached warfare like a chess grandmaster approached a board. Behind him, Chen Wei could see a bridge that looked nothing like standard Terran designs, all flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift between solid matter and something else entirely. Standing beside Volkov was a woman Chen Wei recognized immediately, Dr. Alara Ven, though she looked different than the polished academic from the military gala. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her clothes were the jumpsuit of a working scientist, and her eyes burned with the intensity of someone who had achieved the impossible. "Admiral Chenwei," Volkov's voice carried the rough edges of exhaustion and exhilaration. "Sorry we're late to the party. We encountered some unexpected complications during our final test run. I hope you saved some enemies for us. Captain Volkov, we're currently engaged with a Dominion fleet of approximately 197 vessels. We've lost 17 ships and counting. Whatever you're bringing to this fight, we need it now." Chenwei felt a desperate hope building in her chest. Director General Wakonko mentioned advanced weapons systems. "Please tell me you can even the odds." Dr. Ven leaned into frame, and despite the dire circumstances, Chenwei saw her lips curve into a smile that reminded her of a predator spotting prey. "Admiral, we can do better than even the odds. We can end this engagement in a way that will make the Dominion reconsider every assumption they've made about humanity. Captain Volkov, bring us into optimal range. It's time to show the galaxy what theoretical physics can do when you stop thinking in 3 dimensions." The Retribution dropped out of its impossible velocity 30,000 kilometers from the Dominion fleet, and Chenwei finally got a visual of humanity's secret weapon. The ship was beautiful in the way that some predators were beautiful, all elegant lines and purposeful design. It was roughly the same size as a heavy cruiser, but where human ships were built with right angles and practical considerations, the Retribution looked almost organic. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid metal, and there were no visible weapon ports or engine nacelles. Instead, the entire vessel appeared to be a single integrated system, form and function merged into something entirely new. The Dominion fleet noticed the new arrival immediately. Chenwei watched as 30 vessels broke formation to engage the Retribution, clearly intending to destroy the lone ship before it could affect the larger battle. The lead Dominion cruiser fired a full spread of plasma weapons, enough firepower to vaporize a city, directly at the Retribution at point-blank range. Dr. Ven's voice came across the command channel, calm and almost amused. "Captain, if you would demonstrate the phase-shift defensive system?" What happened next would be replayed across human space for generations. The Dominion plasma barrage reached the Retribution and simply passed through it like light through glass. The entire ship had become translucent, ghostly, occupying space without being entirely present in it. The plasma dissipated harmlessly against the void behind where the Retribution should have been, and then the ship solidified again, completely undamaged. "Phase shift technology," Ven explained, and Chenwei could hear the pride in her voice. "We're manipulating our quantum state, existing in multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. Physical weapons can't touch us when we're shifted. Now, Captain Volkov, please demonstrate why offense is just as important as defense." The Retribution rotated smoothly, and Chenwei saw the hull shimmer along its entire length. Then the ship fired its primary weapon, and the fundamental nature of warfare changed forever. A beam of impossible darkness erupted from the Retribution, not the bright light of lasers or the burning plasma of conventional weapons, but a stream of absolute void that seemed to consume light itself. The beam struck the lead Dominion cruiser and simply erased it. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but removed from existence as if it had never been there. The void beam swept across 3 more Dominion vessels before dissipating, each ship vanishing the moment the beam touched it. "Zero-point energy extraction and projection," Ven continued, her voice taking on the tone of a professor delivering a lecture. "We're tapping into the quantum vacuum itself, extracting the energy that exists in supposedly empty space and weaponizing it. The beam doesn't destroy matter, it returns it to its quantum ground state. From an outside perspective, the target simply ceases to be." The Dominion fleet reacted with the panic of predators who suddenly found themselves facing something higher on the food chain. 40 vessels concentrated fire on the Retribution, a barrage that would have obliterated any conventional ship. The Retribution phased through most of it, and the few hits that connected while the ship was solid simply splashed against shields that bent spacetime itself to redirect incoming energy. Chinwei watched in awe as humanity's experimental warship danced through the enemy formation like a dancer through raindrops, its void beam carving impossible paths of destruction wherever it fired. All ships, Chinwei broadcast to the fleet, support the retribution. Target any Dominion vessel that gets within firing range of our ace. Let's show them what coordinated human combat looks like. The human fleet surged forward with renewed vigor, their weapons adding to the chaos the retribution was creating in the enemy formation. Ships that had been minutes from destruction found new purpose. Captains who had been preparing for death suddenly saw a path to victory. The tide of battle turned in the span of heartbeats. Supreme Commander Carthex appeared on human channels, his four arms gesticulating wildly, his composed demeanor shattered by the sight of his fleet being systematically dismantled. What is this? What have you done? This technology should not exist. We have the scans from your vessels, we know your capabilities. This is impossible. Captain Volkov appeared on the same channel, and Chinwei saw the cold smile of a chess master delivering checkmate. You scanned our regular fleet, Commander. You made assumptions based on incomplete data. Did you really think a species that went from wooden sailing ships to faster-than-light travel in 500 years would show you everything we could do? We're humans. Surprising people is what we do best. Now, I strongly suggest you withdraw before I'm forced to demonstrate our other new toys. The Dominion fleet was already fracturing, ships breaking formation and turning away from Earth's colonies. They had lost 34 vessels in less than 10 minutes, and the retribution showed no signs of slowing down. Carthex's massive form seemed to shrink on the display, the arrogance replaced by something Chinwei had never expected to see in the alien commander, fear. This is not over, humans. The Dominion has stood for 17,000 years. We will return with greater forces, with weapons specifically designed to counter your new technology. You have won today's battle, but the war has just begun. Carthex's image flickered out, and moments later, the entire Dominion fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and vanished from the Arcturus system, leaving behind only debris and the stunned silence of humanity's surviving vessels. Chinwei slowly sat down in her command chair, her legs suddenly weak as the adrenaline of combat began to fade. Around her, the bridge crew erupted into cheers, officers hugging each other and shouting with the raw emotion of people who had stared into the abyss and lived to tell the tale. She let them have their moment before speaking. All ships, damage reports, and casualty counts. Get search and rescue teams to any survivors from our lost vessels. And someone get Captain Volkov back on the channel. We need to coordinate. She trailed off as the retribution moved alongside the Sentinel, matching velocity with a precision that spoke to incredible control. Volkov appeared on her display again, but this time Dr. Venn was fully in frame, standing beside the captain with an expression that mixed exhaustion and triumph. Admiral Chinwei, Volkov said formally, requesting permission to dock and brief you on the retribution's capabilities in person. I think this conversation needs to happen face-to-face. Chinwei granted permission and found herself in the Sentinel's primary docking bay 30 minutes later, watching as a sleek shuttle from the retribution settled onto the deck with barely a whisper of thrust. The hatch opened, and Captain Volkov emerged first, his tall frame moving with the stiffness of someone who had spent too long in a command chair. Behind him came Dr. Venn, and Chinwei was struck again by the intensity in the woman's eyes. They exchanged formal salutes, and then Chinwei led them to her ready room where they could speak privately. The moment the door closed, Volkov's formal demeanor cracked slightly, and he allowed himself a tired smile. That was closer than I would have liked, Admiral. If the Dominion had pressed their attack for another 10 minutes before we arrived, we might not have had a fleet to support. The retribution is powerful, but taking on 200 ships alone would have been problematic. He accepted the coffee Chinwei offered with grateful hands. What you demonstrated today was extraordinary, Captain. A single ship turned the tide of an entire battle. Dr. Venn, your theories clearly worked beyond anyone's expectations. Chinwei studied the physicist, noting the way Venn and Volkov stood near each other, a subtle intimacy in their body language that suggested their 18-month mission had created bonds beyond professional collaboration. Ven nodded, her fingers absently playing with a data tablet she'd brought from the shuttle. The phase shift technology and zero-point weapon are just the beginning, Admiral. The retribution is a proof of concept, demonstration that we've been thinking too small about what's possible. During our deep space mission, we encountered evidence of ancient civilizations that make the Dominion look primitive. Structures that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, energy signatures that suggest they were tapping into forces we're only beginning to understand. Everything we built into the retribution is based on reverse engineering fragments of technology millions of years old. You found ancient alien technology and weaponized it in 18 months? Chinwei felt her eyebrows rise. That's either brilliant or incredibly reckless. Both, probably, Volkov admitted. But Dr. Ven is a special kind of genius, Admiral. She sees patterns in chaos, connections between theoretical physics and practical application that no one else can perceive. I've watched her solve problems that had our entire science team stumped, usually while getting 4 hours of sleep and living on coffee that could strip paint. The way he looked at Ven when he said it spoke volumes about feelings that went deeper than professional respect. Ven's cheeks colored slightly, and she shot Volkov a look that was equal parts exasperation and affection. Andre exaggerates. The entire crew of the Retribution contributed to what we accomplished. But he's right that we were operating on the edge of reckless. There were 3 separate incidents where we nearly destroyed the ship testing new systems. The phase shift drive has a failure mode that briefly transforms the vessel into a quantum probability cloud. Very exciting, absolutely terrifying, and not something I want to experience again. But you got it working, Chinwei said quietly. You gave humanity a chance when we had none. Whatever happens next with the Dominion, you've bought us time and proven we're not defenseless. What happens next is we build more ships like the Retribution, Ven replied, her intensity returning. The Dominion will come back, probably with allies and adapted tactics. We need to be ready. I have designs for integrated defense platforms, improved phase shift technology for the entire fleet, and weapon systems that make today's demonstration look primitive. But I need resources, Admiral. I need the best scientists humanity can provide. Manufacturing facilities, and political backing that won't flinch when I propose ideas that sound impossible. Chinwei considered the woman before her, this brilliant physicist who had achieved in 18 months what most people wouldn't accomplish in a lifetime. You'll have it, Doctor. After today, I suspect you could ask for a moon and the Colonial Council would find a way to provide it. But I have a question, why did you volunteer for this mission? You could have had a comfortable career in academic research, but instead, you went into the darkness beyond known space with an experimental ship that might have killed you. Why? Ven was quiet for a moment, her eyes distant. Because comfortable research wouldn't save humanity when the universe decided to show us how small we really are. I grew up reading about humanity's history, Admiral. Every time we got comfortable, every time we thought we knew our place in the world, something came along to challenge us. Ice ages, plagues, wars, resource scarcity. We survived because some people refused to accept limitations, because there were always humans willing to push into the unknown looking for solutions. When I learned about the Retribution Project, I knew it was where I needed to be. Turns out, I was right. And I found something unexpected along the way. She glanced at Volkov, and the captain reached out to briefly squeeze her hand. We're getting married, Volkov said simply. After we stabilize the military situation and make sure humanity isn't about to be conquered, obviously. But 18 months in deep space, facing death daily, and achieving the impossible together tends to clarify what matters. Elara is the most remarkable person I've ever met, and I'm not letting her go. Chinwei felt a genuine smile cross her face for the first time since the Dominion had issued their ultimatum. Congratulations. Both of you. After what you've accomplished, I'd say you've earned some happiness. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message, and she glanced down to see a priority communication from Director General Okonkwo. Speaking of which, I think Earth Command wants to personally thank their heroes. You're both about to become the most famous people in human space. The following weeks transformed the retribution from a secret weapon into a symbol of humanity's defiance and ingenuity. Dr. Venn found herself leading a research initiative that drew the best minds from across human space, all focused on understanding and replicating the technology that had turned the tide against the Dominion. Captain Volkov was promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of the Advanced Warfare Division, tasked with training crews for the new generation of phase-shift vessels. The first production model rolled out of the orbital shipyards above Earth 6 months after the Battle of Arcturus, christened the UES Defiance in honor of the ship that had sacrificed itself buying time for the retribution to arrive. Chen Wei attended the commissioning ceremony and watched as Venn and Volkov stood together on the stage, their hands intertwined, addressing the assembled crowd of dignitaries, scientists, and military officers. They had become humanity's greatest hope, proof that human ingenuity and determination could overcome any obstacle. But more than that, they had become a symbol of what humans could achieve when they refused to accept the limitations others imposed on them. The Dominion did return, as Carthax had promised, but they came to negotiate rather than conquer. The Supreme Commander appeared via hologram before a very different Terran coalition than he had threatened months before. Behind humanity's diplomatic delegation sat 3 Retribution-class warships, their presence a clear message that the power dynamic had shifted. The Dominion acknowledges humanity's right to the contested systems, Carthax said stiffly, his 4 arms rigid with suppressed frustration. We propose a treaty of mutual non-aggression and the establishment of recognized territorial boundaries. Ambassador Stone, the same man who had delivered humanity's defiant response to the original ultimatum, smiled coldly. The Dominion acknowledges what it cannot take by force. We accept your proposal, Commander, but with modifications. Humanity will not be confined to our current systems. We will continue to explore, expand, and establish ourselves among the stars. Any uninhabited systems we claim are ours by right of discovery. If the Dominion has a problem with that, we're happy to discuss the matter further. His gesture toward the Retribution-class vessels made the nature of that discussion abundantly clear. Carthax's amber eyes dimmed slightly, but he nodded. Acceptable. The Dominion also wishes to establish trade relations and scientific exchange. Your phase-shift technology has applications beyond warfare, and we have knowledge that might benefit your species. The treaty was signed 3 weeks later, and humanity officially became a recognized power in the galactic community, not as subjects or conquered people, but as equals who had proven themselves through defiance and innovation. The story of how humans had turned certain defeat into diplomatic victory spread across the known galaxy, and other species began to look at humanity with new respect and, in some cases, cautious fear. Admiral Chen Wei retired from active duty a year after the Battle of Arcturus, her legacy secure as the officer who had held the line against impossible odds. She attended Volkov and Venn's wedding on the planet of Arcturus Prime, watching as 2 people who had saved humanity pledged themselves to each other surrounded by friends, colleagues, and the grateful citizens of a species that had refused to surrender. During the reception, Chen Wei found herself standing beside Dr. Venn, both of them looking out at the stars through the massive windows of the orbital facility where the celebration was being held. Do you think the Dominion will try again? Chen Wei asked quietly. Carthax doesn't seem like the type to forget or forgive. Venn shook her head, her wedding dress a flowing creation that somehow made her look both elegant and like she might pull out a data tablet at any moment. They'll try. Eventually, or someone else will. The universe is too big and too dangerous for us to ever let our guard down completely. But that's okay, Admiral. It's what we do best. Someone threatens us, we figure out how to overcome it, and we come out stronger on the other side. That's the human story in 4 sentences. Humanity, fuck yeah, Chen Wei said softly, using the phrase that had become an unofficial motto for the species since the battle. Exactly, Venn agreed, then laughed as Volkov appeared and swept her onto the dance floor, his formal dress uniform somehow making him look both distinguished and slightly uncomfortable. Chen Wei watched them dance, watched the way they moved together with the synchronization of 2 people who had faced the impossible and won, and felt a deep sense of contentment. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through conquest or submission, but through the same stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had always defined the species. The Dominion had ordered humanity to surrender, and one warship had arrived to deliver the answer: never. Not now. Not ever. And in that defiance, humanity had proven what they had always suspected. They belonged among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as the species that looked at impossible odds and decided they were merely a challenge to overcome. The future would bring new threats, new challenges, and new moments when humanity's survival hung in the balance. But Chen Wei had no doubt about the outcome. Humanity would do what it always did: adapt, overcome, and emerge stronger. Because that was what humans did. That was who they were. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that really meant.